So you've had some success stories of churches that are really making inroads with the next gen. And these aren't all
Yeah,
mega churches with thousands of people. And they're across the denominational spectrum, I should
yeah,
say.
yeah.
What are some of the keys to success? What are some of the best practices, Kara?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Carey. So, along with Jake Mulder and Ray Chang, what we've done in our book is we've taken what we've learned by journeying with over 1,000 churches through the change process, as well as what we learned from scripture, as well as what we've learned from really good organizational research. There's a lot of good study being done on how organizations change and how leaders lead well. And we've come up with a change map for a church that wants to move into the future. And that change map has 4 zones. And they're pretty simple, but I'll hit them real quickly now. Maybe we can unpack some of them. It starts with here. What is your current reality? How are you listening to your current people and your current community?
Like an audit?
It can be an audit. I mean, we give all sorts of
But I
exercise.
mean, like an honest audit.
An
Like,
honest
yeah,
audit.
like-
Yeah. What focus groups, what questions, how can you, disseminate through small groups to really understand how people are feeling, what they're thinking, what their losses and longings are, what's your current reality. So that's the here. The there is the second part of the map, and that's God's best future for your church. And, here we can look to scripture, we can look to stories from our church, we can look to all sorts of ways that God might reveal that better there to us. So those are the first 2 zones, here and there. Then there's who. These are the people that we get to lead change with. And, for listeners to this podcast, you might be listening to this podcast on your own. You can listen to a podcast on your own. You can't bring about change on your own. And so how do you create the team, regardless of what size church you're at, whether you're at a church of 75 or church of 7,500, how do you create a team that leads toward that better there? And then lastly, and this is what we spend more time on than anything else, is the how. How do you take this group of people, and move from here to there? And here there's so many practical things that churches can apply, like leveraging small wins, like taking advantage of experiments, like failing people's expectations at a rate they can stand. Those are just some of the lessons we give on that how. So it's here, there, who, and how. Any church can do this and experience a better future.
Can you explain failing people's expectations at a rate they can stand?
Yeah. Well, see, what's interesting is all of us have what my colleague at Fuller, Scott Cormode, calls mental models of leadership, and even a mental model of a church, what we think church should be. And a lot of times when we are bringing about change, we're offering people a different mental model than they're expecting, a different picture of what church or what leadership even looks like. And a big key to failing people's expectations at a rate they can stand is understanding how quickly your church can change. What we have found time and time again, this was true with my own church. When my own church went through our training at Fuller, we found time and time again, churches overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. So churches are trying to do too much in that first year. They're too much like a microwave, and they need to be more like a slow cooker in that first year, and building for the next 2 or 3 years. And that's how they can see longer term change. I'll just give you a more specific, tangible example. A lot of times when it comes to prioritizing the younger generation, there's senior adults who end up feeling like they've lost something. If a church is going to be more mindful of young people, that might mean that senior adults get a little bit less attention and energy. And that could be threatening to senior adults, understandably. But what we saw and what we continue to see is that when churches give somebody who's going to lose something a powerful taste of what they gain, something or someone they love that's going to be better off because of the change, then they're all in. And that's part of what it means to fail people's expectations at a rate they can stand. So, again, using senior adults as an example, or just adults in general, there's one church that wanted to move toward more contemporary worship involving young people more up front. That was a little jarring to senior adults until the church said, let's think about your grandkids. Let's think about the kind of church that your grandkids would want to bring their friends to. And that's when the penny dropped. And those adults who had been hesitant and even opposing the change, all of a sudden they said, oh, if it benefits my grandkid then and their friends, then I'm in for things that are not my first choice. So that's an example of failing people's expectations at a rate they can stand.